Hello, movie fans. I'm Mary Lyle, the Director of Education for the Western Heritage Museum and Lee County Cowboy Hall of Fame. And I'm here to introduce the second film in our classic Western series, The Magnificent Seven. It was released in 1960. It was based on another film by the great director Akira Kurosawa, who is a Japanese director. And so it is based on his film, The Seven Samurai. And that came out in 1954. Many people wanted to adapt it for an American audience. And there's a lot of argument and discussion over who got the rights first. But the upshot is that Yul Brynner wanted to do it. He's the one that really was motivated with it. And he did get the rights with his partners. Now, the director for this film is John Sturges. He directed Bad Day at Black Rock, The Gunfight at the OK Corral, and The Great Escape. Kurosawa was so impressed with what they did that he reportedly gave John Sturges a beautiful samurai sword. The music, and that's probably the most iconic thing about this film, it was composed by Elmer Bernstein. He went on to compose many, many other film scores. This film is the second most televised film of all time, second only to The Wizard of Oz. So a lot of people have seen it, but this time when you look at it, maybe you will look at it a little bit differently with the information I'm providing. In 2013, it was selected for the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress, and the films that are in that registry are preserved. Okay, I mentioned before that Yul Brynner was the driving force behind this film, and he really was. He is joined by Steve McQueen, who plays Vin Tanner, Charles Bronson, who plays Bernardo-OREILLY, Robert Vaughn, who plays Lee, James Coburn plays Britt, and Brad Dexter plays Harry Luck. You also have HORST BUCHHOLZ. He plays Chico, a wannabe gunfighter. As the bandit chief, you've got the great character actor Eli Wallach, and he plays CALVERA. They used actual Mexican horsemen for his gang, and they really adopted him. When shooting would start for the day, they would bring him his horse, they would inspect the horse, make sure that the saddle was on right, and then they would take him on a ride. So he was one of them. I'll give you one more little thing to look for. None of these actors were really professional gunslingers. They were taught how to use their guns in this film. So Eli Wallach, the bandito chief, he was not real comfortable around guns, and despite John Sturges telling him all the time not to look down when he was putting his gun in his holster, every time he puts the gun in his holster, he looks down. Yul Brynner and Steve McQueen on the set did not get along that well. Steve McQueen was still a young actor, still trying to make his name, very ambitious and very competitive, especially with Yul Brynner. If Yul Brynner's horse was bigger, Steve McQueen would complain. If Yul Brynner had a better line, Steve would complain. Or he would do things like try to upstage him. And they had several confrontations about it. Lots of times you will see Steve McQueen will do something distracting, upstaging. He will be waving his hat in the air like he's swatting a fly or fanning himself. In later years, McQueen called Yul Brynner, and he apologized. Apologized for his behavior on Magnificent Seven. He said, "You could have and you should have fired me, but you didn't. And for that, I am very grateful." And Yul Brynner was gracious and magnanimous. And Yul Brynner said, "I am the king, and you are the rebel prince, but every bit as royal." Of course, he relished his role as the king in The King and I. He loved playing that part. He played it on stage. He played it in the film. And later on in his career, as he was getting older, he did many revivals. He just loved being the king. That was him. And it just fit him like a glove. They had to cast it very fast because there was going to be an actor strike. If your casting was done before the actor strike, you could go ahead. Robert Vaughn was cast in it as Lee. He called up his best friend, James Coburn, who he went to school with, and he said, "You ought to get over there. They are casting this film, and there's a role that I think you'd be great for." In fact, he is one of the ones that loved Seven Samurai. He had seen it 15, 16 times. Horst BUCHHOLZ, why did they cast him? Well, he was an up-and-comer. They said he was going to be the next big thing. And he plays his role with a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of dedication, but he did not become the next big thing in America. He went back to Germany and became a big star over there. This film was shot in Mexico, and the Mexican government had some issues with the way that Hollywood had been portraying Mexicans. Some of their portrayals were not too flattering. So there was a censor on the set at all times. In fact, the Mexican peasant, they did not want them appearing in these raggedy outfits that would put them in a bad light. In the KUROSAWA script, there is a group of farmers who recruit protection from the samurai against a very evil warlord. And the Mexican government didn't want the peasants to appear weak. So instead of recruiting them, they go to the border to buy guns. They're going to protect themselves, even though they don't know how to use guns. And that evolves into finally hiring these men to teach them. Something that you may recognize is the character that Yul Brynner plays in Westworld looks exactly like Chris from The Magnificent Seven, except he's a killer robot. But I thought that was very interesting that they revived it because his character became an icon. They wanted to honor it in Westworld. It was released to the public, but it was not critically acclaimed. It was popular. It did very well at the box office, or else they wouldn't have made all those sequels. Yul Brynner got married on this set, and they used the fiesta scene as their wedding venue in a way. So they shot the fiesta scene, and then Yul Brynner and his wife got married, and everybody partied and had a good time. This is a very well done shoot 'em up Western in the classic sense. So I hope you will join us and watch Magnificent Seven coming up on Sunday, and let us know what you think. Contact us on Facebook. You can send an email to the museum, and I'd be happy to hear from you, hear what you think about our films.